One more look to the right corner. Right corner. Right corner.
Right here in front of you.
Thank you. All right. And we are in the right corner. Right corner. Okay, one more, please. To the right corner, please. Right corner, please. Please, down.
Straight ahead, please.
This way. This way. What you be surprised? This way.
Just in the middle.
This way, down. Here.
Just one more facing really left. And back to me straight ahead, please.
This way, miss. Miss, this way. And here, please. You miss me. Thank you. Thank you. Nice work.
Would you like something to
Right corner. And the right corner. Emily, this way. Emily, right corner. Right corner. Emily, right corner. Emily, this way. No. You're right.
Yeah.
Matt. Right corner, start. Matt, this way. Down here.
Can you look up in the middle?
This way, please. Matt.
Matt, look up in the middle, please.
Matt.
This way.
Let's go. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Mielants.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yes.
This way.
Cillian, to the left.
This way.
Together to the right.
One step forward, please.
And to your right again, please. Perfect.
Cillian.
And to the right, sir. On your right, please. Can you both look to your right?
Cillian, this way. Wait,
Cillian, can you look to your right, please?
Cillian.
Cillian, can you look to the left?
Cillian, look here.
There always is an eager anticipation for the Berlinale's opening film. This time, it's Small Things Like These by Tim Mielants, a Belgian director who can shine with a star. Cillian Murphy in the leading role, just nominated for an Academy Award for Oppenheimer. The movie takes us to a small town where in the year 1985 it's an adaptation of a novel, and we experience this very delicate time just before Christmas. Bill works as a coal merchant to support his family, the church dominates the social life, and Bill's existence is suddenly questioned. Coming up, the press conference for the opening film of this Berlinale, Small Things Like These.
Thank God you came when you did, Ben. We'll have some tea.
I'll not, Mother.
You've time to sit and show my purses in the office. Leave your coat off, you'll feel the benefit later.
Hello. All right. Thank you very much. No, thanks. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference for the opening film of the 74th Berlinale, Small Things Like These. I will introduce our guest, starting from your left. You might be starting to get the impression that we rather like the films he produces. He was here last year with the film Kiss the Future in Berlinale Special. What a delight to have you back in Berlin, Matt Damon. He's an illustrious playwright and also writes for the screen, the screenwriter of Small Things Like These, Enda Walsh. A film will always be worth seeing if she's in it. Behind the rather terrifying Sister Mary is the great Emily Watson. He's from Belgium, and his career took an international turn in the last very productive years, directing several series, including Peaky Blinders. The director of Small Things Like These, Tim Mielants. Ireland's pride, winner of major awards for Oppenheimer, with perhaps more to come. We're honored to cap this glorious streak with the opening of Berlinale and this heart-wrenching performance as Bill Furlong, Cillian Murphy. Even when her characters appear restrained, she excels at conveying the internal turmoil held within. Mrs. Furlong is Eileen Walsh. He was an executive producer on Kiss the Future as well, and returns as the producer of Small Things Like These with his company Big Things Films, Alan Maloney. Please allow me to start with just a couple of questions. I would like to ask Cillian Murphy if you could tell us a bit about the premises, the birth of the project for this film.
Well, it actually came about because I really wanted to work with Tim again after working with Tim on Peaky Blinders Series 3. And I knew he was a real, true artist, and we got on really, really well. And he's such a phenomenal director. And we were trying to find a project that we wanted to work on. And he called over to me in Dublin, and we were just throwing things around. And then it was actually my wife, I think, said, "Well, what about Claire Keegan?" And then I had read the book, I think, but I didn't realize that the rights were available. And then we checked, and miraculously the rights were available. So then I brought it to Alan, and I said, "What do you think of this?" And he loved it. And then I brought it to Enda, and I said, "What do you think about this?" And he loved it. And then Alan was working with Matt on the doc you just mentioned. And then I ended up working with Matt on Oppenheimer and said, "What do you think of this?" to him. So it kind of came about that way. It was a very kind of serendipitous kind of good. It happened really quickly, but it was just a kind of good karma.
Alan, can you comment on this? What was your answer to what do you think of this?
That's pretty accurate. I mean, I haven't seen a film come together as quickly or as easily. And I mean, obviously there was a certain, I guess the coincidence of us both working with Matt in around the same time, and Matt and Ben setting up Artist Equity, and Drew Vinton, who's here, was very heavily involved in Kiss the Future as well, and read the Enda turned the script around in a very quick period of time. It was like 2 months or something. And Drew read it, Matt read it, and kind of within a weekend they said, "We want to make the film." And that doesn't happen very often. So we sort of moved forward from there. So yeah, it's been one of those almost kind of like dream films. Just came together really quickly, and everybody that came in to do it, I think, wanted to do it for the right reason. It's obviously a very significant story in Ireland, and I think very pertinent and relevant for today for a global audience. So, yeah.
There are questions. Yes.
Hi, it's Pavel from RTL. Nice to meet you all. My question to you is because you're all professionals, but today it's the world premiere of this film. So are you still nervous in front of a world premiere, or is it just routine for you?
Are you nervous that it's the world premiere of the movie?
No, I'm not.
All right, next question. Yes.
Hello, Derek Scally, my name from the Irish Times. I'm sitting here in the middle. I have a question for Cillian and a question for Matt, if I may. I'm sitting here.
Is there a lot of hands up?
Thank you for a very strong film. It'll linger, I think, with a lot of people. I thought it's just actually like Bill sets off a nuclear bomb in New Ross in 1985. It's not quite on the scale of Oppenheimer, but the consequences are going to be huge, as you can tell. I sense this film was less about guilt and about shame. And in grappling with shame, in the time? And then as an Irishman, I'd appreciate your opinion. How much do you think Ireland is still grappling with that shame, and what do you think is the mental cost of not actually opening up or acknowledging, taking ownership of New Ross in 85 and all the other New Rosses, particularly as somebody who's dealing with mental health and working with people, researchers and so on mental health? What do you think is the mental cost of Ireland today still struggling with this subject? And my question for Matt, you've had so many positive experiences in Ireland and you've done some great branding for a particular brand of an Irish supermarket, but what was your thoughts reading this book? Because there have been films and books about this before, but you have this now in your lap and you're being asked to come on board. This is a very different Ireland to the Ireland you've probably encountered. Could you even begin to imagine that Ireland existed and not very long ago, and the consequences are still there today? Thank you.
Well, I don't know if I'm qualified enough to answer the question about, speak for the nation, really. But I do think that it was a collective trauma, particularly for people of a certain age, and I think that we're still processing that. And I also think that art can be a really useful balm for that wound. And I think the book certainly was, and it was a huge seller in Ireland. It seemed like everybody read it. And I think, the sort of irony of the book is that it's a Christian man trying to do a Christian act in a dysfunctional Christian society. And it asks a lot of questions about complicity and silence and shame and all of those things. But I really don't think the duty of art is to answer those questions, is to kind of provoke them. And maybe it's kind of easier to absorb than an academic report or a government report. So I'm sure Enda will have something to say about that, but that's all I have here.
Okay. This was, for us on the studio side, a very easy decision, really, because of the people who were involved with it. And just to echo what Cillian said, that was one of the things that attracted us to it, were these great artists grappling with this trauma. So I mean, for us, just as on our side of it, it was a very easy proposition. It was about facilitating an environment where they could do this work and explore these things and really getting out of their way. I think, as Alan alluded to, it is kind of like a dream. That's what it felt like for us, because there was so little headwind. It just felt like we were all kind of rowing in the same direction. And sometimes the job can feel easy, and it's not. So that's a credit to everybody up here.
Can I ask Tim what this film is about for you?
For me, it's a very personal story. For me, it's a story about grief. And structuring the pain of grief. I think that for me that was always the engine of the movie, and I get like a traumatic event myself. So I went through these different stages of grief together with Cillian, and tried to get to the bottom of that one. And so I always because I'm not Irish and I don't own it. I didn't try to own it. Everybody helped me through it, carried me through it. So yeah, it's for me, it was like this personal journey I did with everybody around me.
Yes.
Mark Harapetian, publisher and editor of the film magazine Spirit, The Smile and the Storm since his 16th living year. So I do it also a long time. I liked especially the acting of the film. It's an important topic, of course, and here unknown. And the acting was superb, especially Cillian. I liked it more than Oppenheimer, to be honest. And so take it as a big compliment. But my question goes to Matt Damon. Can you tell us a little bit about how to find projects like this and about the production way? Especially also, I read that your friend Ben Affleck was also involved. So please tell us about the way of the production. Thank you.
I wish they were always as easy as this, because this literally fell in our lap. I was out in the New Mexican desert with Cillian, And I was sitting across from him watching what he was doing in Oppenheimer. I had already called Ben and told him what I was witnessing and how incredible it was. And a couple days later, Cillian said, I have my next movie I really want to do. And I said, we're starting a studio. Can we do it? And so, as Alan said, it really came together quickly. So I think sometimes it's serendipity that kind of pulls these things together. And obviously, we do the normal thing of receiving submissions and reading them, and we've got a whole team of people who try to figure out what our slate is going to be. But this one just kind of fell from heaven for us.
Since we're back on the process, can we hear Enda on the adaptation and what key decisions you had to make to adapt the book by, Claire Keegan?
By Claire Keegan. Well, I was a huge fan of hers, like Cillian, and she's an extraordinary short story writer. For anyone who hasn't read her book, Antarctica, which is her first sort of, you should really sit down and read it. She's amazing. And with there, it's sort of similar to sort of William Trevor or whatever. But my job really was really just to get out of the way. I mean, what she has in the book is amazing space for the audience or the reader. And I think that was my sort of job, to allow it be spare, to sort of to not get worried about the sort of to know that there was a sort of forward trajectory to it, but it was probably, when you're walking with this character, there's a sort of a developing anxiety because, you know, we're not being told so much, and there's a place for us as an audience to be with it. That feels a very sort of itchy place to be in the best possible way. And it was a real, for me, also just doing this sort of subject was an extraordinary thing, having lived through the 80s. And as an examination, without it being sort of histrionic, which I think she's the master of, really, you know, and I think the film doesn't sort of play on it. It didn't need anything like that. She gets it true. There's a sort of a line that she does. It's both reality, it's a sort of the truth of it feels true, and also there's a poetry to it. The more sort of we walk in sort of, and we walk with him, we sort of lose ourselves in his internal sort of, you know, like struggle and all that type of thing. And the film, I guess, sort of becomes, you know, a manifestation of him and his sort of psychology and all that. But I mean, listen, it was like, you know, I'm an urban man, like, you know, like, and it was an extraordinary sort of thing to lose myself to the pace and the rhythm of that world. And yeah, it was a really, really hugely sort of beautiful sort of experience, and very, as everyone says, very, very fast. But I think there's sometimes with stories, and this is why she's an extraordinary writer, is that she gets, whether it's a parable or a sort of a whatever it is, she gets to the crux of something really, really clearly. And it's just being around that. It gathers its own sort of momentum. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing, so we're not searching for anything. We just need to listen to it, keep on listening to the work. And that's, I mean, it was a real honor.
Yes.
Claudia Schulmerich, Frankfurt, Weltexpresso. Sie sagten gerade das, was es wirklich geht.
You were just talking about the crux of the matter, and for me, there was also something else that was very important. Ireland, of course, cannot have enough of this kind of film. Dealing with the historical past, that's very important, but there's the question for an international audience as well that knows the problem. If you ask me, the crux was really at the end of the film. Around me, people were sitting going, yeah, and what happens now? And I was asking myself the same question. And then I was sitting in the cinema and thinking to myself, yeah, now it's up to us, actually. So it really calls on us to show empathy today, to look at ourselves and to look at where injustice is happening, and not to just let it happen, but to intervene, even if it causes us problems. I wonder whether that's just a side effect of the film that worked for me in that way, or was that really what you were thinking of? Was that part of the message as well?
I think I'll try to start this. I think, look, you know, the film is about, you know, speaking truth to power. It's about standing up against, I suppose, the institutional abuse at the time, and of course, you know, it's beholden on us all to do that. So I think we felt great responsibility with the story for that reason. And because I suppose, one of the interesting things, reading the book, I was on page 25 and it mentioned, I don't know, the Human League or something playing on the radio. And up to that point, I thought it was set in the 50s. And then I realized it was 1984, 85, which was the year I left school. And I was kind of shocked myself to think that it was so close to us, to my generation and our generation. And I think that, bringing that story out and kind of ripping the bandage off, I think, wounds can only heal by allowing them, air and allowing them to heal properly. And I think that was really important to us. But I don't know if that half answers your question.
Yeah.
My name is Mahari Sigit, African Refugee News. I have a question for Emily. How challenging was for you to make this part, because it was absolutely great. And the second question is, this is a perfect film. Really, it has everything that you want from cinema. I'm not talking about Hollywood. You have grief, you have laughter, you have friendship, you have, with a little help of my friend, I can go on. So can you tell me how you wrote this script, because it was perfect.
Wow, that's sweet.
Well, when I read this script, I knew immediately that this would be one of the great days of my acting life, to spend the day with Cillian playing that scene, which is, on the surface, is quite domestic and simple, and it sort of cuts through. There's something just the very worst of what humanity can be, and the kind of grip. And I think, people across many religions and cultures can understand the grip, being in that grip and not being able to break out of it. And what I think is remarkable about the film is that Cillian plays a man who's not political or articulate, or it's not, the issue isn't raised in any format that we would recognize as protest, but it's just like this growing, his conscience is, it's the most delicate and beautiful thing that's just irrepressible. So I just knew that I wanted to be there, but I had the most tremendous fun as well, playing the role, because I just did. Yeah.
Yes.
Is it my turn? Oh. Hi, everybody. Anna York, Pop Matters. I have a question for Mr. Damon on the production side, and also Mr. Murphy and Maloney. It's a broad one, so please pick it apart as you wish. Wonderful book, phenomenal film. It's also a deeply political film, and I know both Mr. Damon and Mr. Murphy are deeply political artists, which is absolutely admirable. So, in the age where dollar is king and industry and marketing is everything, how do you make a film like this? How do you fund it? How do you find the audience for it? Of course, the audiences are thirsty for more political stories. Think of Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. They can be hugely influential, but with regard to budgeting, logistics, with regard to just getting them out, I have a feeling it's becoming progressively more difficult. So if you could talk a little bit about it on your end, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's changing every day. I mean, it's very hard to, there's not a perfect prescription for, but our feeling is that, and it will remain until we go broke, that making a good movie is really the antidote to any of these things, and that requires a lot of trust with your partners, and we had that trust with Cillian, with Alan. We thankfully had this previous relationship. To basically treat them like grown-ups and trust that they were going to do what they said. We had a lot of meetings beforehand about, okay, how do we do this? How do we structure this? so that you know we can make the film that we want to that you guys want to make, and how can we empower you to do that? But ultimately, it's an exercise in trust with the people that you're working with, and then trust in the audience. And this film doesn't pander to, you know, it's asking the audience to care about cinema, and I believe that there's enough of an audience in the world that still does, and that there's, you know, these are the kind of movies that when I started out, when I really started getting work in the 90s, you know, you would see movies like this all the time, and it was just part of our culture and our lives, and I'm really grateful to be able to bring a movie like this into theaters, and we'll see what happens. But ultimately, it's constantly in flux, and but we believe that it's not dead. So we're going to keep trying to make great movies like this.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. 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 My question is to Cillian. I'm this year Golden Globe international voter, and first of all, congratulations, Globies. And I'm from Georgia. This country is not so close from Berlin, and if you can imagine, my 16-year-old daughter arrived here just for one day to see you, and she's standing down now, just only for one day. And that's why my question is, how do you think and create your characters which can catch two different generations? For example, my daughter, me, my parents, and how do you do this? Thank you. And I will say these words to my daughter. Thank you.
I don't really know. That's very kind of you to say that. And hello to your daughter. I just think it's always for me being about good writing. That's the most important thing, and good collaborators, because you can't do any work without good writing, and it has to speak to you first. But then, if it speaks to your collaborators, and I'm a really strong believer in re-collaboration, you know. In fact, all of these people here I've worked with more than once, you know, and it's been a long journey working with these people. I think that breeds really good work. And then in terms of how the audience responds, you don't really know, but you've got to believe it, and your collaborators have got to believe in it. And speaking of which, one of you's got to ask this extraordinary actor a question, because she's one of my oldest collaborators. We did a play with Enda 28 years ago. Sorry, Eileen, for aging us. But, you know, that's one of the reasons I think that, you know, like myself and Eileen were in this playing husband and wife, like Tim said when he put the camera on us, that he could just feel the history for free. And I think that's, if you can do that sort of stuff, it's kind of magic, you know, if you could put that on film, and I love that sort of stuff.
I was also missing hearing Eileen. Can you tell us how you got into your character, and do you relate with her?
I felt like my mother. I'm the youngest of 5 girls, and we lived in a house very similar. When Tim met me the night before shooting and showed me the house, I felt like it was very similar to the house I grew up in. And my dad was a coal man, and which my mother would kill me for saying. He was more than that. But yeah, so the script meant a tremendous amount to get to play a woman. And actually, I think the family are so representative of the nation of Ireland, of that weight and that shame and that guilt and that control, and then trying to allow that to be evident in a long marriage was very important. I think our friendship was an amazing place to start from, and the trust with each other just allowed it go deeper. In fact, I don't know if I've had a similar experience ever, you know.
Thank you. But on this note of trust and knowing each other, did it help having worked together before, Tim and Cillian? This is Indeed, we're talking about the quality of the performance. How did you direct Cillian into?
Telling all my problems, whispering in his ear. That's basically what I did. Like, he knows me. He knows everything. He almost knows as much as my wife does. That's no. It's like trying to go to sharing everything with him. And then trusting each other. I think trust is so important, and I trusted all these people around me. We have to climb a mountain together. We have to, otherwise we fall down together, or if we reach the top. And then that's what we try to do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question from Brazil, Rodrigo Fonseca from Correio da Manhã. Question to Cillian and Tim. Your movie made me think a lot about Terry Malloy, the character of Marlon Brando in On the Waterfront. I think it's a tradition of social drama, and I would like to hear you about this tradition and how would you define the kind of heroism Bill Furlong is associated with. Thank you.
Well, it's interesting. I remember I listened to a podcast that Claire Keegan did about the book, and she said that he's not a hero. He's actually a man that's undergoing some sort of breakdown. And I thought that was a much more interesting way to play it. And nothing is decided upon, nothing is, planned. It all happens by accident, and it's all this kind of collision of, this repressed grief and the stuff that's happening in his marriage and the stuff that's happening in the community. So I don't ever see him kind of as a hero. And I think the best thing about the script and about the book is that at the end, everyone has a different opinion about what happens. Is it a happy ending? Is it a sad ending? Is it what's going to happen to Sarah? What's going to happen to the family? What's going to happen to his job? And it's not necessarily, like a beautiful, triumphant ending. I think not necessarily, but people can decide what they want.
It's interesting about the heroism. I remember us chatting a day about how if you were in your mid-40s in 1985, so you grew up in 50s, 60s in Ireland, and you said something really interesting, Eileen. You said men didn't have access to their emotions. Yeah. And I thought that was a very interesting key to go so great to look at men who can't cope with their emotions, and that was very helpful for me.
Yeah.
Hi, first of all, thank you for the movie. It resonates with me on all the levels, from visual to the mental one. And my question is, this character, Cillian, he found humanity in himself and courage to do this choice to help this one soul. Also, he wasn't, like we said, a superhero, Superman, or super rich, has his family, has his problems. So what do you think? How do you answer it to yourself? Is this breaking point between I live my life, I care for my kids and my family, and I do not break out of their line, And the other one, I just cannot stand suffering of this other person. I have to help her no matter what happens to me, basically. Because I think it's not only in this story, it's a relevant question, but what's happening all over the world. I mean, why do I help Ukrainian refugees? I'm Ukrainian. Why do I help people in Middle East? Why do I help, I don't know, some friend who is struggling? So what's this answer to you? Thank you.
That's an excellent question. I don't think I can give as good an answer as you gave a question, but I think it's that sort of human spirit, that we kind of we don't listen to it, or we listen to it. And I think certainly what happened to him in his childhood, that act of charity or kindness or decency that happened to him in his childhood affected him, and then the loss of his mother affected him. I also think the fact that he's surrounded by women, he may be the main character, but it's really a film about women, and so I don't know the answer, but I think it's what Alan mentioned, that listening to your own instinct, listening to what you trust to be right and wrong, not what people tell you to be right and wrong. I mean, if only we could all do that, but he does, and like I said, I don't know what the outcome for him is, or for the girl is, but I think that's ultimately what he did. But again, it wasn't a plan. It was just a sort of a mess. he did make that gesture in the end.
There was someone in the back, and I'm afraid it will be the last one.
Hi, it's Mona here from Screen International. Cillian, it's also a big night for you on Sunday. How are you feeling about, the fact that there's a date clash with Berlin and BAFTA? Is that a bit annoying? Would you have liked to have been able to spend some more time here? And also, how are you feeling about ahead of Sunday?
Well, I love Berlin. I've been here. This is my 5th time at the Berlin Film Festival, so I love coming here. So I'll always make time for it. And then Sunday, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Just happy to be there.
Really sorry, we have to wrap up. Thank you for your interest, and see you tonight at Berlinale Palace.
Thank you.